Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 37 of Real Stories. Today I will be giving you 3 stories in the Let's Not Meet variety. So, without any further ado, let's get started. When I was younger and just got into online college, I got my first apartment. I had 3 jobs and one was third shift, but I was more ready for the independence. While I had a great time there, I did have one problem: my new downstairs neighbor. So the other tenants are a bit older than I am, with one of them being an old man who lived there for 20 years. The other was an old woman with a small kid, probably been there about 3 or 4 years, and finally an empty apartment downstairs. I keep to myself, so I never really spoke to any of them before I noticed that there was a new move-in. A man that seemed close to my age, maybe a little older, black, greasy hair, and a little overweight. But in my experience living here, people seemed nice, and I was happy to possibly have someone to say hello to. That possibility turned sour really quickly when a casual hello turned into, "That trash really stinks," a remark from him when I was taking out the trash, and I heard him make snide remarks under his breath when I've done nothing wrong. Even remarking on my sister's lack of a bra when she came to visit me. Naturally, I was grossed out and annoyed that he had to comment on anyone, especially my sister. I told the landlord about it, but nothing came of it, of course. One day, I was asleep and someone came banging on my door. I had no idea who it was, and my anxiety was beyond strong. I'm alone and never expect a knock that wasn't planned. It was the neighbor saying that I was being too loud and I need to stop harassing him. I explained through a closed door that I was asleep and that I was not making any noise. He left and stomped down the stairs while muttering and calling me a witch. My heart felt like it was beating out of my chest. I went back to bed, only to hear him coming back up the stairs and banging on my door again. When I addressed him again, he said that I was harassing him and that he's calling the cops because I'm still making noise. I told him to ask the other neighbor because there's no way I could possibly be making any noise when he is on the other side of the building. He thanks me politely before stomping off and cursing me and calling me a witch again. I tell the landlord right away that one of his tenants is acting hostile and I don't feel comfortable or safe, and he tells me that he will look into it. I hear nothing for a week. It turned out it was the old neighbor hitting the floor with a stick like one of the classic cartoons because the rude neighbor was playing music too loud. I swear he should have known that, as I'm on the other side. It was like he wanted an excuse to come speak to me. In the following months, it only got worse. One day, I walked out in a snowsuit so I can play in the snow. Big kid at heart. He just had to remark on my clothing being unnecessary, even when there was 3 feet of snow out. I forgot what I said in response, something like it's not his business, but he basically just said, "Screw you." I just walked off to go play in the snow. It gave me little enjoyment because of the earlier interaction, so I went back home to get ready for work. The snowstorm got worse, and I had just come back from my night shift. I see him alone in the parking lot with the car on and the windows up. I was on high alert as I carefully walked around and up to the alley to get to my apartment. The second I close the door to go upstairs, I hear loud, wall-shaking music. It's him. He's blasting his car music at max volume in a snowstorm at 3 a.m. I was surprised and confused because what was his reasoning? He did it until 8 o'clock in the morning, and I found out later it was to spite the old neighbor for telling him that his music was too loud. Soon, it all started getting serious, though. Cursing in the hallway and playing music even louder. With the police knocking at our doors asking us about a noise disturbance, and now a mutual hatred amongst the neighbors at the jerk who kept us all up. But that's not the worst part. I just got back from my night shift, and it's 3 a.m. again. I'm dragging my tired feet over to the mailboxes that are right inside the townhouse door. As I'm looking through the ads and the letters, his door opens at the top of the stairs. My stomach tightens, hoping I don't have to interact with him, but drops when he starts speaking unintelligibly. At the top of the stairs, he gurgles and mumbles something. "What?" I said, but he repeats the same weird sound again, only more aggressive. I felt something was more than off, and noped right around the corner and out the back door to head to my car. I thought I'd rather be asleep in my car than possibly be attacked in the hallway, and as I'm having this thought, I hear the window above slam open. I freeze and then spin back around the edge of the corner. It's him, and he's looking for me out the window. I stand there for a moment, listening to him, and he's speaking gibberish and yelling. I thought to myself that this was my chance to sneak upstairs, past his door, and into my apartment. I sped up the stairs and past his door to the second flight of stairs. Right as I reach the top of the second flight of stairs, his door swings wide open with a big slam that makes me jump, and I hear him muttering and gibberishly speaking loudly while walking up to the stairs. My heart is beating out of my ribcage as I am simultaneously walking and fishing my keys out of my bag. Like a classic horror movie, I keep fumbling the keys looking for the correct one in the dark hallway as I hear him walking up the last couple of steps. I mentally told myself not to panic as I correctly spot the right key and slide it in the keyhole on the first go. I swing the door open and practically launch myself inside before slamming it shut behind me. I pause and hold my breath as I hear him just 5 feet from my door, muttering in gibberish and calling me a witch before walking downstairs and out of the building. I watched him through a crack in my window, blind pacing back and forth, muttering, cursing, and at one point screaming before walking off into the night. With a little bit of relief, I head to bed, hoping he doesn't come back. The next day, I get a text from the landlord. He says that guy was arrested and he won't be coming back. Seems he was off his meds again, and attached to the text is a link. Of course, I raised an eyebrow to that comment, thinking, now you tell me? The link showed a mugshot and a description of his nightly activity to include stealing from a Turkey Hill, threatening cops that he'll shoot them, punching one of them, and previous to all this, it said, quote, earlier in the night when he dropped his pants and rubbed himself against a window and then ran around the town square while yelling. I never did see him again, just his family coming in and moving his stuff. So to the off his meds rude neighbor, let's not meet again. Ooh, yikes. That is a very creepy story. It hit a little close to home because I live in an apartment building, so you never really know what your neighbors are actually up to. Like, I've said, what's up in the hallway to a couple of my neighbors, but I really don't know them very well. So I definitely feel for this person in this story. So in this story, our author is living at this apartment building and she gets a really bad neighbor. This is reminding me of that Netflix show, like Worst Neighbor Ever, which I haven't watched yet, but it just reminds me of the title. However, in this story, even when they first meet, he's kind of off to a weird start because she sees him in the hall when she's taking out her trash, and he makes a weird comment that trash stinks, which is just kind of a weird thing to say when you don't know people like that. I'm not sure exactly what this guy's issues are, but he might possibly be on the spectrum, because I know that one of the things that commonly goes with that is not really understanding social cues and maybe not understanding when to say what or keep your thoughts to yourself. So it is possible that he may be going through something like that. We do find out at the end of the story that he was not taking his medication, which explained some of his aggressive and erratic behavior, but we'll get to that in a moment. So they're off to a weird start, and then one day our author is asleep and somebody is banging on her door. And she is like, yo, I don't even trust this, because in my apartment building, if I'm not expecting somebody to knock on my door, that's weird. I don't know who you are or what you want, but don't knock on my door. And that's how she's feeling too. So, she's already kind of on point because of that. And it turns out to be the guy. And he is, being really mean to her. He calls her a witch, the PG term. And this guy's being really aggressive, and he's saying that she's being super loud and that, it's driving him crazy. Meanwhile, she was just sleeping, so it was not her. So this guy is taking out this frustration on the wrong person. And she's like, I was just trying to sleep, so it definitely wasn't me, but okay, whatever. So she goes back to bed, but then he comes back upstairs and starts banging on her door again. Now, he's still blaming her. He's still mad at her, saying that, she's causing all this noise and whatnot, and that he's going to call the cops because they're making so much noise. And they told him to ask another neighbor because it's not them who's making the noise. So this person calls them a witch again and just kind of storms off. And that's their second major interaction. So when this type of thing happens, one way of dealing with it is talking to the landlord. And they tried to do that, but they didn't hear anything about it for a week. So it turned out that it was an old neighbor that was making the noise that our author was getting blamed for when they were just trying to sleep. So obviously it wasn't them, and in the following months, it only got weirder. At one point, they were going to just hang out in the snow because, some people really like to just go play in the snow. And they had this snowsuit on, and this guy, just had to make a comment saying that, the fit was unnecessary or whatever, which kind of just ruined her whole vibe, and then she didn't want to go and play in the snow. So it just wasn't good. He's just being rude and weird to people. So the next point in our story is when our author is coming back from a night shift, and it's super late, 3 a.m. to be exact, and they see this creepy neighbor guy in his car with it turned on at 3 in the morning, which is kind of weird. He's just chilling in the parking lot. So our author gets up to their apartment, and this person, the crazy neighbor, is blasting music in their car for 5 hours. That wasn't even the worst part. They had got back from a 3 a.m. shift again. So what happened is they were checking their mailbox when they see this guy appear, the neighbor guy. And he's kind of just incoherently just being aggressive and weird. He's saying things that they can't understand, but it's kind of gibberish, but it's definitely not good intentioned. And they're like, all right, you know what? This person's being aggressive. Instead of, risking going into my apartment and getting assaulted, I'm just going to go sleep in my car. They hear a window open, and this guy is now outside looking for them. So definitely very scary situation. They are able to, finesse their way back into the apartment, and they slam their door closed, and they're safe and whatnot. And the guy is right outside the apartment making weird noises again, incoherent, gibberish. Then he leaves. But when he leaves is when things get really interesting because he gets arrested. And our author finds out because the landlord messages them and says that, he won't be coming back. And when the landlord messaged them, they sent a link. This link contained the arrest article, which apparently included details of stealing, threatening to shoot these cops, punching one of them. It said that, he was just being inappropriate with himself and running around yelling. Luckily, that was the end of their interactions, as this guy was arrested and never came back to that building. They said that they only saw his family members coming in and out to move his stuff out of the apartment. But in that article, they mentioned that this guy was off his meds. So, like I said, this was a most likely cause for his erratic and aggressive behavior. Because when people are prescribed medication, it's normally for a reason. So when people do not take said medication, they will act out. And that's definitely what happened here. It was definitely a scary situation because when people are in that state of mind, you never know what they're capable of because they're not thinking rationally. We'll be right back with more creepy stories after this word from today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Hey guys, it's really hard to go through life if something is weighing you down mentally. For years, I tried to get through life while suffering from anxiety and thinking that everything was normal. I just thought that this is just how I feel, and, it was pretty miserable. However, once I finally talked to a professional about it and I was able to get help, I'm doing so much better now. Honestly, it's a game changer. So if you think you might be feeling stressed, depressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, today's sponsor, BetterHelp, is here to help you. BetterHelp offers licensed therapists who are trained to listen and help you. And you can talk to your therapist in an online environment at your convenience. There is a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's network of 20,000 therapists that give you access to help that may not be available in your area. You simply fill out a questionnaire to help assess your specific needs, and then you can get matched to a therapist in as little as 48 hours. You can then schedule video and phone sessions and exchange unlimited messages with your therapist. You can request a new therapist at no additional charge at any time. So join the 3 million plus people who have taken charge of their mental health with an experienced BetterHelp therapist. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/realstories. That's betterhelp.com/realstories. All one word. There's no time like the present to get your mental health in order, and it will vastly improve the quality of your life. Trust me. Now let's get back to the show. So I was on the way home from Arby's with a mint chocolate shake. I zoned out for a second and almost didn't notice his car. I tried just letting him through, but he insisted I go on ahead. I didn't think much of it and just continued on walking. He drove on ahead and parked his car near some apartments. He had on a black polo shirt, so I assumed he was just dropping something off for a job or something. As I kept walking, he approached me and offered me a $20 bill. I asked why, but couldn't understand what he said in response. I refused since I know what's best for me. However, this did not deter him. He grabbed my waist and I stepped to the side. He then started pulling me towards his car. I bit his hand so he wouldn't silence me and made sure to scream as loud as possible to try and attract any bystanders if I could. He managed to get me into his car, and just before he could close it, I stuck my foot through the door to keep it open. I then got out and made myself go limp, since adding dead weight without warning creates sudden resistance and makes it harder for them to grasp you. Due to this quick thinking, I was able to get away unharmed. I quickly booked it and got on the phone with my mom once I was at a safe distance. I made sure to stay on the phone until I got back. After that, I'd taken some time to calm down and waited for the cops to get there to take my statement. The officer ended up praising my quick thinking, telling me that I'd luckily done everything right in this situation. Please guys, take self-defense seriously. I've only ever had a week-long course, and just that alone had managed to save my life. I didn't remember too much from my self-defense course, and only used the basic techniques that I had remembered, which was making noise, dropping my weight, and checking behind me. Any other actions I'd taken were a result of logic and quick thinking. Chances are, if I'd gotten even more self-defense training, it likely wouldn't have been as close of a call as it was. Also, never accept money from strangers. While there are good Samaritans, there's also people who don't have your best interest in mind. If you do think they have good intentions, make sure to double check by asking why they are offering you money. If you don't get a good legitimate reason, then make sure you refuse. If you refuse and they persist, then get away immediately. Wow, that was a really scary predicament, but luckily our author had the right training and the right quick thinking skills to be able to escape that situation, for the most part unharmed, other than the emotional damage of almost getting kidnapped, which is horrifying. So in this short story, our author talks about how they're on their way home from Arby's with a mint chocolate shake. I've never really been a fan of mint and chocolate, but shout out to Arby's. Arby's is pretty good. I like the mozzarella sticks, but I've just never been really a fan of mint in dessert in general. The only thing I really like mint for is toothpaste and gum, but that's beside the point. Anyways, in this story, they're heading home from Arby's with their shake, and they take note of this car that goes by. They tried letting them pass, but they insisted that our author go ahead. They didn't think much of it, and they just kept walking. So they drove on, and they parked near some apartments. They made a note of what they were wearing, just a black polo shirt. So they thought that they were just dropping something off. It's a pretty standard shirt for a lot of different jobs. They can require just black polos. But this person approaches our author and offers them a $20 bill. Our author is understandably curious because, it's not every day that somebody just walks up to you and tries to give you money. And normally you think, well, I like money, so maybe I should take this. However, most of the time, and this is one of the truest things I've ever heard, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. And in this case, it was. When they asked, "Why are you trying to give me money?" But they couldn't really understand what this person said in response. So they refused since they didn't know what was going on. However, this person then grabbed their wrist and tried to pull them away and was trying to pull them inside this car. And they really got very close to doing so. They say that this person managed to get them in the car, but just before they could close it, they stuck their foot through the door and kept it open. And then they made themselves go limp, since adding dead weight without warning creates a sudden resistance. It makes it harder for people to grasp you. So luckily, due to these quick moves, they got out of there and they ran off and got a safe distance away and then called the cops. But yeah, guys, this person made it out because of self-defense training knowledge and just quick reactionary instincts. So I would definitely side with the author here. If you can, take a self-defense course. Even if you can't take a 30-part course, just the basics will give you stuff like this. Just knowledge that will put you that much more ahead of a potential bad situation. Because a lot of criminals are not really expecting women in general to fight back. They're expecting them to be easy targets. That's why criminals are scummy, because they go after who they think is an easy target. And unfortunately, in our society, these criminals, a lot of the time, think that women are weaker, so they will go after them. So it's really important to take self-defense seriously, to always be aware of your surroundings, and to keep an eye out for weird people. Because she noticed this car and then kept looking at this person and took note of what they were wearing and everything. They did that for a reason. Their brain was unconsciously telling them to keep a track of this person because maybe they're on some weird stuff. And it turns out that's exactly what they were on. Some very weird, sketchy, dangerous stuff. So it's just very important to keep an eye out for people and protect yourself and do whatever you have to in these situations. There's no rules in a fight for your life. You just have to survive. So you have to do whatever you got to do to make it out of that situation. This story takes place in a very small town in the northeast region of the U.S. in the summer before I went off to college in 2015. After I graduated high school, my parents decided to move to a smaller, more affordable house about 45 minutes north into the mountains. We stayed in my childhood home because the public schools in my area were the best in the state, and my parents really valued my education. I ended up going off to an amazing university and now have an incredible career because of my excellent education. As most people in the U.S. know, amazing public education usually means higher property taxes. My parents got to the point where they could not afford the taxes on their 4,000 square foot home anymore and decided to sell it just after I graduated from high school. Their home is humble, and it sits on a beautiful piece of land on the side of a beautiful mountain. The trees are always so green, and there is a lot of wildlife around. They don't have many neighbors either, as their driveway is about 1.5 miles long. But this is what they chose to live in after I went off to college. In August of 2015, we moved into this new house. I wasn't planning on staying long as I was getting ready to head off to college as a freshman for the first time. We decided to have a little housewarming party with a bunch of family friends and my best friend there as well. My dad was manning the barbecue, My mom was making drinks, and we were all playing with my dogs. It was a grand time, and everyone had so much fun. My dad had built a brick fire pit in our backyard. Just to set the scene for you here, the fire pit was about 30 feet from our back patio door, and we had a picnic table and other seats all around. Behind the seating was the tree line. It was so dark sometimes at night that you needed a flashlight to see 10 feet in front of you. With the fire pit lit, you couldn't see someone unless they were either sitting next to you or across from you in front of the pit. My best friend decided to stay the night, and we asked my dad if we could make some s'mores. As it was getting a little chilly, as it does in the late summer in the Northeast at night, my parents left us outside with my dog, Nino. Nino was a huge 100-pound black lab/pit bull mix. He was such a loyal and incredible dog that my dad trained him as his right hand. He was our protector, as he could run extremely fast and was very strong, and he alerted us when something went bump in the night. Side note, he passed away a week before I got married in 2022. He was 17 years old and lived an adventurous life with my parents, hunting squirrels, laying out in the sun, and running amok. Nino laid in between us, facing the tree line, and my best friend was to my right. Our backs were to the dark, dense tree line. This was our first mistake. We were laughing, joking, and eating s'mores together, planning for the future, and generally excited about going off to college together. She decided to play some music, and we just relaxed, feeling content and at ease. It was the perfect summer night, until Nino started growling. I saw his ears perk up and his head cocked to the side. He then sat up and continued to growl. My best friend and I both looked at each other, thinking Nino just saw a stray animal or something non-threatening. This area was known for lots of deer and rarely a coyote or a wolf. As he was trained to help my dad hunt deer, we assumed it was a buck or a fawn in the distance behind us. We went back singing along to the music playing and talking about our fall 2015 class schedule. Again, Nino started growling. Our second mistake. We did not call out for my dad. We didn't even think there was a problem until Nino started barking repeatedly. This time, louder and more vicious. He stood up and started barking as if alerting us to activity beyond the tree line that we could not see. We stood up as well, the fire obscuring our view though. My best friend took her phone, paused the music, and turned on her flashlight. She started to walk towards the edge of the tree line with Nino by her side, still growling and barking, alerting us to not go any further and to call for help. We stood still, in silence, listening. I was too afraid to even breathe at this point. She started walking into the woods, and when she shined her flashlight, she saw a figure. Someone peering out behind a tree. A man with a green shirt and green pants on, about 5'11", with glasses too. We screamed and ran as fast as we could inside, leaving the fire unattended and this creepy man behind the tree. What we did not know at the time is where this man came from. We crashed through our front door, breathless, with Nino tailing right behind us, and startled my mother, who was washing dishes and cleaning up from the party. She was talking to my dad about something they saw on the news, and I think we cut them off mid-sentence to explain that there was a man dressed in all green lurking behind a tree in the woods. We didn't know how long he was there or if he was still there, but we were both crying. I remember feeling extremely sick, like I was going to throw up. My dad jumped in, grabbed his shotgun and his headlamp, and ran outside with Nino. My mom gathered us into the living room, shut off all the lights in the house, and locked the doors. She told us to be quiet and that she was going to call 911. As she did that, my best friend and I shook in fear. We were anticipating gunshots and screaming, but never heard any. My mom, now on the phone with 911, described what we saw to the operator. I heard my mom say, "Oh," in an alarming way. At this point, my dad came back inside and my mom let him know that the police were on their way. Being a small town on the mountain with less than 10,000 people means that we don't get our own police force. We get the state police every time there is a call made to emergency responders. My dad put his gun away and waited outside for the police to show up. To our bewilderment, they didn't just send one police officer, but 10, and the entire SWAT team and helicopter to circle the area. We were rightfully terrified. I was practically having a panic attack at this point. The police officers came inside our home and asked my best friend and I what the man was wearing, what he looked like, and if we were able to discern any scars or tattoos. We explained the weird matching green outfit and the glasses. The officer excused himself and alerted the police and SWAT members outside of our description. They started to search the woods behind our home with guns drawn, flashlights, and a helicopter circling above. They advised us to stay inside and that they would let us know when/if they found anything. After about 25 minutes, we got another knock on our door. It was not one, but two officers this time. My dad let them in and they began to explain the situation. One officer explained that we must have seen the news that a convicted felon from a prison about 20 miles away had escaped into the mountains. The police set up a perimeter 10 miles from the prison, but the convict escaped them yet again. The outfit that the man was wearing, as well as our description, signaled to them that the escaped convict was 100% lurking through our remote, densely wooded backyard that night. The all-green outfit was a standard issue for prisoners in my state then. They did not, however, find the man near us after 25 minutes of searching. He was still out there. The officers let us know that they were going to have a squad car stay and watch our house for a few days as they were unable to, quote, locate the fugitive and believe he is still an active threat to our safety, unquote. That night, and for 3 nights after that, we all slept in the living room together. My dad's shotgun was within arm's reach of him at all times. Later that week, we got another knock on our door from the officer stationed outside our home. They let us know that the man was back in police custody and that we were safe. They advised us to get security cameras and of how sorry they were that this happened to us. After that, my parents spent about $10,000 on security cameras and fencing for our backyard. It is now all fenced in, and we have about 4 security cameras to watch the tree line at all times. I guess you never know what will go bump in the night. To the escaped convict and perhaps murderer who watched my best friend and I sing along to 2015 pop hits from your hidey hole behind my parents' isolated home, let's never meet again. Yikes, that's a very scary but also very interesting predicament. Just from my criminological background, I would be very interested to just watch them search for this guy and just be very interested in the details of the case. But I'm a big true crime fan, if you couldn't tell from this podcast. But that was definitely a situation that was literally too close to home for them to be able to feel safe. Because in this story, our author is just chilling with her friend at their house. And this house is kind of in a secluded location, as their parents bought this nice house up in the mountains. And being that it's up in the mountains, near them is a lot of wooded area. And there's a wooded area that they can see from their lawn where they're sitting at. And their friend thinks that they hear something, so they go to investigate after our author's dog, who, shout out to Nino, their dog, who unfortunately passed away. So RIP Nino. But their dog had been growling and looking off into the distance as if trying to alert them of something. So after being like, oh, Nino's not just, growling at a deer, there's definitely something there. Because Nino starts barking, and they're like, what is going on? So she goes to check, and her friend sees a figure behind a tree. And she actually gets a good look at him because she has a flashlight. He's dressed in all green and has glasses. So immediately, they're freaked out, and they run into the house, and they call the police. And the police, instead of them thinking, oh, maybe they're just going to send one cop out here and he'll take a description and whatever, that'll be the end of it. Instead of that, 10 cops show up and the SWAT team, because as it turns out, this guy is an escaped convict from a prison about 20 miles away from the house. And green was that state's prisoner outfit. So he matched the description perfectly. So after that, they're terrified, and the cops are like, yeah, we're going to have somebody, chill outside your house, make sure that he doesn't come back or whatever, as they continued their search. And they continued that search that night, but they didn't find him. But they did look with weapons drawn and a helicopter overhead, the whole deal. So that's a pretty action-packed night. And for the next 4 days, they're all just kind of paranoid, staying in the living room together, unsure of what's going to happen. Luckily, they end up getting a knock on the door, and it's the cops again, and they inform them that they caught the guy. And they advised them to get security cameras, which they later did. They ended up spending $10,000 on security cameras and fencing for their backyard, and now it's totally secure. So what a crazy story, because you never think that that's going to occur when you hear like a suspicious noise coming from the woods, that it's going to be this escaped convict, and it's all this, brouhaha about all of it. So what a crazy story, but definitely a very good one. Alrighty, guys, that's going to do it for episode 37 of Real Stories. This week you have heard Off His Meds, Now You Tell Me by Acid Rain FA11. Then Encountered a Kidnapper by Soggy_ass_cheeks. That's their name. And finally, That Time My Friend and I Were Spooked by an Escaped Prisoner by Juju12_18. All stories were read with the permission of their respective authors. And if you have a story that you would like to hear on the show, please email it to me at thearspodcast@gmail.com. That's thearspodcast@gmail.com. And you can remain anonymous. Also, remember, if you're thinking about giving therapy a shot, why not try BetterHelp? With my offer code, you can get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/realstories. And that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed, leave a review, tell a friend, and I will see you next week with a brand new episode. Have a great week and stay safe.